Hi, I'm Dr. Cindy Dupuy. I have a PhD in learning disabilities. I do diagnostic assessment, advocacy, and intervention. I'm also an adult with dyslexia and dysgraphia.
Hi, my name is Kim Sharman. I've worked for 15 years or so with kids kindergarten through college on dyslexia, dysgraphia, ADHD, and other learning disabilities. And I have
Okay,
ADHD.
and so I keep jumping in on you. I apologize. So we are going to talk about the whole question of, are there different kinds of dyslexia and
What does that
subtype?
mean? I get this question all the time.
So, um, I'm going to say, for the most part, subtyping doesn't matter. Would you agree?
I would agree because they need, yes.
Because the treatment is still structured literacy. The treatment is still intensive systematic instruction. Um, Now, there is a subtlety in there that I think is important. Okay. So there are three things that I look at for dyslexia. Do you remember what those three are? The big one is, or the first
Oh,
one that everybody goes to is phonological processing.
what'd you say?
Phonological processing,
Oh, phonological processing, yes.
phonemic awareness, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Second one is rapid automatic naming.
Rapid automatic naming and then reading fluency, right?
And then the third one is orthographic processing.
Okay, so that's the orthographic processing, phonemic awareness or phonological processing, and rapid automatic naming. And people don't understand rapid automatic naming.
Right. Now, we've done a whole video on rapid automatic naming, but we'll go over it again really quickly. If you can imagine your brain having a spider web of neural connections, right? Um, when you have a rapid automatic naming issue, as you're trying to go between 2 points rather than going in a straight line, you go through all sorts of back alleys to get to the same point. Sometimes you'll go there directly, and sometimes you'll do the circuitous route and you'll have this lag. And you can hear it in us, you can hear it in me, because you'll find me pausing while I'm coming up with a word that I'm looking for. I mask it fairly well, but you can still hear it when I do it. Um, so individuals that have phonological awareness issues, super easy, relatively easy to treat. We can go in and we can clean that up easy. Kids with rapid automatic naming issues are the harder one. Why?
Because there is no neural pruning in people with dyslexia. So
Reduced
um,
neural pruning. Not none, but reduced.
reduce neural, yes.
Which
Because
means
what
what,
happens,
Kim?
what?
Which means what? Reduced neural
It means
pruning.
it, it means that they don't erase the incorrect neural pathways to in their
Along
brain.
circuitous routes to get to
They go
point.
on circuitous routes. And the only thing that I can do is I can make the path wider so they're more likely to select the correct route, but I can't erase or reduce or prune back all the incorrect routes that they've accumulated over the years.
The inefficient routes.
Yes, inefficient.
Okay. So now, if you have phonemic awareness and rapid automatic naming together, in the research literature, they call you a treatment resistor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. You didn't.
Okay. Treatment.
How many years, Kim? And I
I
haven't
never
used
said
this
that
with you.
word. I mean, all my kids are treatment resistors. All I do is treat them. So what? I don't get what you're saying.
Yes, I send you all my treatment resistors because you do an
Yes,
amazing job with them.
thanks a lot.
It's
That's why
cracking
it's
me up.
exhausting.
So
Okay.
the problem is for the kids that have that network issue, we should have drawn out the little diagram. Every time they make a mistake in reading, they put more bad data on the hard drive and we can't get rid of it. So when we go in, we need to do it correctly. We need to do it with efficacy. We need to reduce the tendency to make mistakes. So we talk about error-free practice. Okay.
Mhm.
And then you have orthographic processing, which is, can my eye pick up that fine detail? And often, if we change font, if we stabilize print using appropriate handwriting techniques, and we make sure that kids are being taught to decode and look at the entire word, we can address the orthographic processing issue. And many people think dyslexia is about flipping letters and numbers. And the flipping letters and numbers is kind of a symptom of other things. You can be dyslexic and never have flipped a letter or number in your life.
Right. So what is isn't that the left-right reversal orthographic?
That's the orthographic. Is the print stable? Do I recognize the correct orientation? There could also be an element of, did I retrieve the right label when I'm flipping letters, right? So that's a theoretical perspective I have on that, or a question on that. So those are the main characteristics that make an individual dyslexic from a neuropsychological perspective.
Are those the categories, the three subcategories? Rapid
So if
automatic
you want
naming?
to subcategorize, yes, you can, right? So then let's bring up the whole conversation of stealth dyslexia.
Don't know what that is. You never taught me that.
Well, so this is a term coined by the Ides, who wrote a book called The Dyslexic Advantage, and they call it stealth dyslexia.
Mhm.
And I I'm somewhat befuddled by this term because to me, if you have dyslexia, you have dyslexia. And if it's stealthy, it means the clinician you went to didn't know how to go in and dig and find the right information.
So stealthy means you don't know why the heck the person's not improving? I don't
Well,
get it.
no, the idea behind stealth dyslexia is you've got a really high IQ and you've masked it,
Oh my God, that's all my kids.
right? Like you can be bright and have dyslexia and figure out how to work around it day in and day out. So is it stealth, or is it the clinician that you went to didn't know how to identify it?
Or you masked it up until sixth or seventh grade, and then all the Latin based areas of Latin, then you fall apart because your high Mensa IQ can't handle it.
Um, yeah, I mean, but it should come out in other ways. You should see it in spelling.
Yeah.
You should see it in oral reading fluency. Like I get kids in with high IQs all the time, all the time, and I have no difficulty finding the dyslexia. No difficulty. But I look
But
for it.
maybe teachers don't know how to spot it.
School psychologists often look at, hey, your reading comprehension is fine and your IQ is high, therefore there's no problem. And
Right.
because they don't look at the nonsense word decoding and because they don't look at the rapid automatic naming, they miss it.
Oh, you just said a key word, nonsense decoding and rapid automatic naming.
Yeah. Now, here's another great thing, or here's another thing I'm going to point out is the tests, many of the tests, so for example, the Woodcock-Johnson and the Wyatt have a nonsense word decoding section,
Mhm.
and they have a phonetic representation of how to read the nonsense word,
Mhm.
but they don't always have an audio recording of this is the proper way to read the nonsense word.
Oh,
Which means school psychologists or psychologists in general who may not have a background in decoding
mhm.
may not recognize when the word is read incorrectly because they don't know how to break it down themselves.
That's right. They
Which
don't.
is
None of
why,
them are trained on it.
which is why I'm a fan of the Kaufman, because the Kaufman gives you an audio file and says, here's a nonsense word. Here's how you read it. Here's a nonsense word. Here's how you read it. And it gives it for every nonsense word. Here's how it is read correctly.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Because
So,
there are a couple of variations based on these phonograms that can be multiple sounds.
yeah.
But yeah.
And on the advanced ones, they'll say, here are the 4 different ways you can say this correctly.
Yes. And that should be always included with all of these.
You would think so, right?
It's
But
not.
not everybody does that because
So
it
you're
takes
saying people
time.
are getting scored incorrectly on some of these IQ tests, and the psychologists are not seeing it.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Now, here's another thing is not every psychologist, so different tests measure reading differently.
Mm.
So, for example, on the Wyatt,
Mhm.
the Wechsler individual achievement tests, they score errors in oral reading fluency differently than the gray oral reading fluency test does.
Oh,
So for on the Wyatt, if you repeat or you self-correct a word, it is not
uh-huh.
counted as an error.
Mhm. Oh, really?
Yes.
So if you self-correct within a couple seconds, then it's not an error.
If you start reading it like the word is spider and you read spider, you would be given credit on that item, even though you had difficulty decoding it.
Wow. And that's on the white or the gray?
That's on the Wyatt. The gray
Oh,
oral reading test is if you make an error, it's an error.
okay.
If you make a repetition, if you make an insertion, if you make a deletion, any error is an error. And
Mhm.
so people don't like to administer it, A, because it's hard to administer. And if you don't record it, you are going to miss mistakes.
Yeah.
If you do record it and you play it back, and sometimes I go back and play it back 3, 4, 5 times to hear the mistakes. And I have a system of doing that. So I'm not listening to the entire recording over and over again. You can hear the mistakes. Um, but it is a more sensitive test and will pick up kids having difficulties reading. Okay.
So are
So
you saying that this is a question? I'm sure the tester would be angry, but if a parent would ask, I've noticed that my kids mispronounce words. Like, do you ask the tester, do you record my child's voice when they're reading and decoding words?
you can ask them to, can you please make sure that you record their oral reading and listen to
Ah,
it again? You may not get them to do that. They may give you some answer like, we're not allowed to record. You
that's
are
not
allowed
true.
to record, and in the gray oral reading manual, they tell you, they encourage you to record. Matter of
Wow.
fact, on um, Pearson Assessments has developed a software system called Q Interactive that allows you to administer the tests on iPads, and it actually has a record function built in.
Interesting. Yes.
So you are encouraged to record responses. Clinicians don't want to because it takes even more time to then score the test.
But it's the only accurate way to look at to really
And when you
focus
have a
on
huge caseload
it.
and you have too many students and too many reports to write and too much on your plate,
Yep.
you got to do what you got to do to survive, right?
But you're
And
saying all of this is saying like this is how Mensa kids or high level kids and
get
IQ
missed.
kids get away with not anybody knowing that they have dyslexia.
Or average kids get missed because the right tests aren't used at the right depth, right?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the fault of the clinical psychologist or the school psychologist. If you Tests are freaking expensive.
Mhm.
Like the a new IQ test is going to run you $1,000, and I know because I have just about every single one of them that's relatively robust. It's an expensive investment, and your school district may give you one IQ test, one achievement test, and maybe a little budget here and there to buy other little things. So you have a limited repertoire, and you've got to try and make the best you can out of the tools that you have. Um, I think it would be super helpful to have Pearson go back and have the Wyatt nonsense words read and provide an audio recording for that so that clinicians can make sure that they're listening to it correctly or recognizing the correct pronunciation of those words, and to encourage them to give the subtest. State law does not require the administration of a nonsense word decoding.
It does not. And that is a huge
Not.
problem.
It is a huge problem.
Huge.
So kids that have memorized
Yep.
words get missed. And that's why we're not catching them, right?
So as a parent, you could also ask for the nonsense subtest and say, I would like to see the results of that subtest.
Yes,
That's something you can ask for parents.
right. And so having more depth and breadth of knowledge as parents is super helpful. And here's the irony. I like the nonsense word decoding subtest takes a couple of minutes to administer.
It's
Like,
nothing. It's so
well, but wait, it can take a while to score if you don't have an efficient scoring system set up.
right.
You don't have it recorded, then you're guessing at whether or not the answer is correct or not. And if you do have it recorded and you have to go back and find it in your recording, it's difficult. Now, I use Notability on my iPad, which is an app where I can record on the screen and link the recording to where somebody has said something.
Mm.
So I can go back and tap on it and listen to that particular word. So I don't have to listen to the entire list again. And then I'm scanning through to find the target word. So there are ways to work around it so that you can effectively go back efficiently, I shouldn't say effectively, efficiently
Right.
go back and listen to the mistakes to catch them and not spend 3 hours scoring a 3 minute subtest.
Yep.
Um, Schools in Washington state are not required to administer rapid automatic naming subtests, Kim.
Oh my God. So this is the thing. Rapid automatic naming takes 10 minutes. It's
But
nothing.
but they're not required. School psychologists are not required to do that. They're required to do an IQ test and an achievement test. And when they do the IQ test, they're going to pull the Wechsler scale. And when they do achievement tests, they're going to do decoding and fluency, or not, sorry, decoding and reading comprehension, math concepts and applications, which is story problems and math computations, written language, spelling, and that's it. Because that's all that's required, even though the law says you must assess receptive and expressive oral language. And everybody, not everybody, 90% of the time, that is skipped. And we've had conversations about the fact that if you have receptive and expressive oral language issues, it's going to affect everything downstream.
But just so you parents know, I shouldn't talk about, but for my own experience, when my child was in kindergarten, she scored very low on a phonemic awareness test, like 16%. So I immediately took her to a speech and language pathologist who immediately did a rapid automatic naming test of pictures. You can do rapid automatic naming with anything. Immediately it was there. The signs of dyslexia, the phonemic awareness, the rapid automatic naming, it was there immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, that did not take long, guys. You could do this yourself as a parent.
If you own a way to do it, yeah. There are tools out there. The more important thing is you as a parent listening to your child read. And you know what we need to do is we need to get a kid on and we need to have them read for us. So we need to get a victim. I say victim. We need a kid to come on and read for us, and or we should put out a request to parents, put up some videos, have the kids read certain tasks, and then us evaluate and tell you what we pick up out of hearing them reading.
And you don't have to have their picture. You can have
Yeah.
their voice,
Yeah. So if there are parents out there that would like to have us, and let's limit it, the first 5 people that reach out to us, we will give us the grade of your kid,
Yes.
like what grade level they're currently at, um, and what grade level you think they're reading on. We will send you a passage from a QRI, and you will record your child reading to us and send it, and then we'll put up the audio recording and show as we score it on the screen what
Yes.
we're picking up and what we hear of it. And I would love to have a couple of people, if you've got a kid in your family who's a really great reader and a kid in your family who's a poor reader, we would love to have a quality reading sample from somebody as well to show what it should sound like
Yeah.
from a kid that's reading fluidly. And
This
if not, we'll find somebody locally that we can get to do.
and this video, I hope we can put it in the title. I mean, this is exactly the information I want parents to know.
Yeah.
They have to understand the foundational basics of this question of what creates a dyslexic, what are the characteristics of a dyslexic person?
Well, and so here's what it all comes back to, though. So it even if somebody comes back, so Pfeiffer wrote a couple of tests. He wrote the Pfeiffer assessment of mathematics, the Pfeiffer assessment of reading, the Pfeiffer assessment of writing, and he subcategorizes in writing, you're an orthographic or whatever. Like he has subcategories in his tests, and clinicians will use that. Hey, you got a low subscore in that area, so we're going to put that moniker on your dyslexia. So you have 2 types of dyslexia. You don't have 2 types of dyslexia. You have dyslexia, and you have these processing deficits that are affecting your ability to learn to read. Sorry if I offend somebody by saying it that way. It's dyslexia. These are the characteristics.
Most of my kids have all 3 of these things or little pieces. I mean,
Hmm. Yeah.
or most of them have, right?
Right. Now, if it were another disease, so, and no disrespect meant to anybody, treating type 1 diabetes versus type 2 diabetes is night and day different. Like they share characteristics, but they're actually different, right? When you have a kid with dyslexia, the treatment is the same if you're
Yes.
just phonological, if you're just rapid anapagonetic naming, if you have orthographic processing issues, if you have a combination thereof, or all three, treatment is still the same. The more characteristics you have, the better quality the instruction needs to be,
Yes.
which is why Kim gets all my hard cases.
Well, like, and I have to go back. Some people I have to go back to the foundation and make them understand the difference between the F sound and the V sound. Like, I
Yep,
have to go back to the very, very bottom
right.
for foundation.
So, regardless, you need good instruction. And so rather than worrying about which subtype do I have or do I have a subtype,
Yeah.
the key is to find a highly qualified clinician to do the intervention. And we'll do a whole video on what makes somebody highly qualified to do intervention.
Yeah. I want people to watch this video. I really hope they do. Parents
Questions or
need.
comments? We always love to hear from you. Like us if what you what we're doing is helpful to you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.